Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
In my lifetime, I have seen the Cold War between the East and the West dissolve.
We welcome change and openness, for we believe that freedom and security go together.
In my lifetime, I've seen the Berlin Wall come down.
There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence.
In my lifetime, I have seen apartheid dismantled.
It is absolutely important that you have the knowledge to serve your country and your people.
In my lifetime, I've seen the man of color in the White House.
Out of many, we are one. That while we breathe, we hope. And those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
In my lifetime, I've seen grassroots movements topple governments through the use of social media.
I want freedom. Freedom. Only freedom. Freedom.
We can come together to heal segregation and redirect civilization to the celebration of diversity in oneness. We can make it happen. I am Brother Ishmael Tete, and I believe that world peace is possible in our lifetime. It begins with you and I now.
God bless you. God bless you. I'm happy. I am happy and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a channel of wisdom to you all. Is it the same God that is there in the day, the same God in the night? I'm not talking about literal day and night. In your high times, when you conquer, when you progress, it's that same God, right? And when you're down in the valley, do you remember it is that same God? Well, my title, the sermon, is entitled, Nothing is Lost in God. Nothing is lost in God. I'll give you a brief background as to what inspired my sermon. You know, I was writing my exams, my end of semester exams, and my mother called me and she spoke to me, have you prepared? Don't shake. When they say start work, the normal things mothers will do. After I got off the phone with her, I asked myself, so in the situation where I lose my mother, how would I feel? You know, sometimes when things are going well, you need to take a step back and ask yourself, if I do encounter the opposite, how would I feel? And so I asked myself this question, and so many thoughts ran through my head. I was in pain, literal pain. The thought alone created a ball of some tense, heavy ball just above my chest, and it just dropped down to my belly button. Literal pain. I thought about all the times that I would fight. I had fought with my mother, and she had cried, and my father would call me, Boifio, go and apologize to mommy, and I don't want to do so. I said to myself, have I honored this woman enough? All the things that went through my mind. So my wedding day, who is going to wear my crown for me? And when I give birth to my child, who is going to take care of the child for me? When we talk about hell, that was the hell. That was hell. And for days, all I could think about was the pain I would go through, the anguish I would go through if I lose her. Then I asked this question. Is this God's intention for man anytime we lose something? If I felt this way when I lost my mother, I can only imagine how people feel when they lose business opportunities that they've invested their time, their money. Is this how they also feel? When people lose their marriages, you are sitting down and your husband says, I don't want to do this anymore. Is this the pain they feel? When people lose money, when people lose their pets, their animals, things that they love, is this the pain you all feel? Is this God's intention for man? I wouldn't want my child to feel that way. So why would God want me to feel this way? And so, one beautiful day, I was in Brother Ishmael's office, watching, with the Aqu24, the one going to do the Aqu24. And a thought just came to mind that, Boifio, nothing is lost in God. Nothing is lost in God. But when I was there, I just wrote it down. And I decided to go and think about it, meditate on it. And it was through that meditation that I wrote this whole sermon. And so it's my fervent prayer that at the end of this sermon, you would awaken to a higher perspective of what we deem as losses. What we deem as losses. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. So to further anchor you in the understanding that truly nothing is lost in God, I would bring your attention to three concepts. Three concepts. That is the concept of God, the concept of reality, and then the concept of judgment. Shall we all say it? The concept of God, the concept of reality. Great. So let's start with God. You know, God, I'm sure we've all come to the realization that God is not a human being somewhere writing names of those who would enter his kingdom. God is an ever-happening grace. Nobody can adequately describe what God is. You know, names are merely used to enhance communication, such that if I say that today he bought me a rose flower, the flower doesn't know itself to be called a rose. But to enhance communication between two people, I'm saying, Velma, today he bought me a rose flower. And our mind goes straight to a flower that looks like this, that has this color, and then has this fragrance. So instead of me saying, he bought me a flower that looks like this, I just say rose. Do we understand? And that is how God is. Nobody can actually say God is what you deem as God. The name God is God. It's just something to enhance communication, such that if I say that I was driving and I nearly had an accident, but there was a saving grace beyond my understanding that kept my car still and me safe. Instead of me saying this whole long sentence, I say, God saved me. And we both understand the fact that, oh, I'm referring to this saving power. You know, there's an African proverb that says that when the river meets the ocean, it loses its identity. So that when River Pra comes all the way down to the ocean and it joins the ocean, you can't say this is the water for River Pra and this is the ocean. All we can say is that this is the entire ocean. And that is God for you. That absoluteness without description is God. God. Okay. God is absolute power. It goes beyond the senses. When I talk about the senses, I'm talking about the sense of sight, that's your eyes, then the smell, and then the taste, hearing, and touch, 5 senses. God goes beyond these senses. No sense can adequately describe what God is. It goes beyond tangible matter. It goes beyond things we can touch. You can't see your mind. Are you saying that it doesn't exist or it's not God? You don't see the positive thoughts that you come up with or life puts through in and through you. But we all know that that is God at work. I couldn't have done this, but it is some grace and power at work. God is absolute power. Acts 17:28 says, "For in God we live, move, and have our being." In God we live, move, and have our being only means that there is no existence outside God, because we all dwell in, we are sustained by, and we are all within this whole goodness we choose to call God. Outside God, what is there? Can you imagine anything outside of God? Because if I have established that God goes beyond our senses, what we can see or what we perceive, then it means that what we don't even perceive is still in God. And if you look at the Ephesian emblem, the two concentric circles, it really explains this concept of the absolute power of God. Yes. So we know that whatever our mind can even think about or contemplate on, what we see and we don't see, it is still embodied in between the two circles. So the outer circle represents the entire universe, the entire goodness of God that can exist, outside which nothing else exists. So God is all power. When you are the owner of a warehouse, a gated, well-gated warehouse, and you can't find a bag of cement, you know that the cement is inside the warehouse. Your eyes can't just perceive it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't mean it is just lost, because you know that you are in control of the entire warehouse. So you won't worry about whether it is there or not. And that is how God is. You see, if God has given you a mother, if God has brought a job your way, and you no longer see the job, your job has been taken from you, your mother has been taken from you, isn't it just unto God that it goes to? What is your fear? He says in Matthew 6:30 that if even the lilies of the field are clothed, and they are uprooted and harvested and bent, how much more you? What is your worry? That you are losing something in God? And so this brings me to the conclusion under the concept of God that nothing is lost outside God, because everything happens in God. And if we know this kind of God that we has brought us over here, that seeks to express itself in and through us, then what shall we fear? What is your worry that you have lost something outside? Are you worried you've lost something outside God? You can rely on Matthew 6:30 and be anchored in the firm understanding that you are secured because you are in God. Now let's move to the second concept. I'm establishing something. So the second concept talks about reality. Reality. Often we deem as real something that our senses can perceive. And so if I can see me, then I know that I'm real. If I can't see me, then I know that I'm not real. But let's take this experiment. Kindly look at me. See how beautiful I am? Look at me. And allow your eyes to close for a brief moment. I'm sure a lot of us can still see me in your mind's eye. Allow your eyes to open, please. So, which was real to you? When you saw or perceived me with your senses, or when you saw me in your mind's eye, which is real to you? Take a minute to think about it. Nanefa, which is real to you? What you saw or what's in your mind's eye? Both are real. Good. You see, some would say, it's because I saw you, I know you are real. But does it mean the image you saw in your mind's eye is not real? That is how reality is. There is no fixed reality. And what you even think is real is not even real. And what you think is not real might be real to someone. That is reality for you. Think about now, reality is more or less guarded by our assumptions. We assume things a lot, and it's not our fault. We assume things a lot, and assumptions are brought about by so many factors, like materialism. Materialism says that if you can see something, if you can touch something, it is real. If you cannot see it, it does not exist, and it has worked for people, so that is fine. Culture also brings about assumptions. So if I say that I see by Mr. Tete a dwarf, to him, he knows it doesn't exist. And so it's not real to him. But if I can see the dwarf, it is real to me, isn't it? Religion too has come up. When you hear pastors talking about heaven and hell with so much conviction, most of them actually dreamt and they went to a place that they have defined as hell. That is why they come out with that strong conviction and say that I know it exists because I have been there before. What is your answer to them? We are just happy and so much glad that we have been enlightened to know that these things are states of mind. But when we talk about reality, reality is relative in nature. Reality is relative in nature. And so if someone says that I have lost my job, and so that is reality for me, I'm in that sense of loss, I'm sad, I can't see any other opportunity because I have lost it. That is the person's reality. But what is your reality? We have established that reality is relative, it's not one. So what is your reality? It brings you to the power of choice. You see, it's like a story building. Someone on the first floor can only see what the first floor limits her to. But if you decide to look above the first floor and go to the 10th floor, your reality would be a beautiful and vast landscape that the one on first floor cannot see. And so when you lose your job, when you lose your marriages, when you lose your mother, when you lose your father, when you lose something that you love, what do you choose as your reality? Would you rather look at the 10th floor and say that I need to establish a higher perspective? This is an opportunity for me to go and be loved by other people. Or you are going to lay down on the first floor of the story building and mourn the loss of one soul. For 48 years, you've been mourning the death of your husband. Why? Why? Isn't it time to climb up onto a higher perspective and say that this is an opportunity for me to allow myself to love and be loved by another soul? Why would you sit down? Why would you sit down and mourn and cry when there are vast opportunities all around you? Perhaps that job wasn't meant for you in the first place. That job was there to challenge you to look at another reality from a higher perspective. That marriage, you learned something from it. There was a lesson from it. It's time for you to move on and experience other lessons to help you on your life journeys. But you would rather sit there and go round and round the same one man. Oh, one man. Can God be contained in one man? Can God be contained in one job? Can God be contained in one business opportunity? So why do you cry for that loss? What is your reality? What do you choose to see as real for you? The third concept I'll talk about is the concept of judgment. And I love this concept so much because we are all victims of judgment. Matthew chapter 6 verse 22 talks about the fact that if the eye is single, the whole body will be full of light. If the light of the body is the eye, if therefore thine eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. I'll explain what this means. Simply, single eye. Obviously, Jesus wasn't talking about two eyes because we have two eyes, the physical eyes. Did he mean we should uproot and then have a single eye? We've come to the realization that he spoke in parables. And so this single eye or single vision that is being spoken about is that consciousness where you decide and know that I am choosing to see the good and the divine in every single event I find myself in. That is your single vision. Because you date back all the way to Genesis 1, which says, after every creation, what did God say? And it was good. And it was good. He didn't say that you would go through trials which will be bad, but it is good. He said, and it was good. And so if you have such a single vision where you see the sun shine on all events, truly, your whole body will be full of light. Because you have nothing to fear. You have nothing to worry about. You see, let me explain what happens over here. When a farmer is growing a mango tree, he first starts with the seed. And so he would till the soil, and he would have to line it and put the seed inside and water it. If I come on that scene where he's doing all these things, all I can see is how dirty he looks and how sweaty he is, how smelly the whole process is. I wouldn't even want to go into farming because I am looking through that window where I came to meet him from. And then when someone comes on the scene where the seed sprouts and the leaves are showing, the person says, oh wow, there's life. Look at this seed that is now bearing leaves. To that person, the person doesn't avert her mind to when the farmer was going through that dirty and sweaty process. But if a third party comes on the scene when the fruits are bearing, and then he takes some and he's eating, all he's thinking about is how sweet and delicious the fruit is. He doesn't think about you who had to start for the greater good for him to enjoy the fruit. And that is how human beings are. Because of the window with which we look out from, that is what we deem as whether something is fit for us or something is not fit for us. Only if we could pause and know things in their entirety, know the beginning. He had to go through that for the glory that you are eating as a fruit. And so if you lose your job, the pain that you are feeling, how dirty and low you feel, only if you could pause and know that there is greater good coming from this pain and loss I'm feeling, that is when you would realize that I am not supposed to mourn my losses. I am not supposed to take things as losses, because there are now avenues for you to have a greater good. There are now avenues for you to see and feed other people with the fruits that you have started with. So what do you lose in the first place? You know, let me tell you a story, a folklore. It's actually in the Quran, but I'll make it practical enough. So, Vanessa, myself, I wanted to learn more about life as a mystic, and I prayed that a guru would come onto me and show me the way. And then came Brother Ishmael. And Brother Ishmael told me that, Vanessa, your first lesson will be something that is journey-like. So we'll go on a journey, but I don't want you to ask me any question. Just observe and learn. I said, okay. So before we got to where we're going to, we had to cross a river. And there was no boats. We're stranded. And there came an old man and an old lady, very kind-hearted, very good people. They gave us their boats. They had just one child. They gave us their boats to use. And so we took the boat, we crossed the river, and we killed I realized that Brother Ishmael had killed the son. What life is that? These people have given us all they could do. They are good people. This is not the kind of guru I want, no. I was so angry because, and they are old. I mean, these old people, who are they going to leave all their possessions for? Their son. And these people had toiled for years, and God graced them with one child, and you could just kill the child like that. He asked me not to ask him any questions. I said, okay. So on we go on the journey. We needed somewhere to sleep. And so we went to the chief's palace, because obviously when strangers come to new lands, they go to the chief. The chief welcomed us. He was so good, like our chief here. He was so good to us. He gave us somewhere to sleep. And this village I'm talking about, they were about to enter into a peace treaty with another village the next day. And as a symbol of the peace treaty, the chief would drink from a golden cup, and then the other chief from the other village would drink from that same cup, which means that the war has ended. When we were leaving the village, Brother Ishmael stole the cup. It means that there's no peace, isn't it? I was so angry because this is unlike God. To me, God must be only positive, because I'm looking at it from my society. You can't steal, thou shalt not steal. And so if you are stealing, it's not God. And this is not the kind of guru I want. He asked me to shut up and follow him. So we went to another location, a third destination. We're hungry. And there was this poor man, very thin, very lanky. And he called us, gave us hard bread. You know how fresh bread that is not fresh is very hard. But that's all he had. So he gave it to us to eat. And he gave us his hut to sleep in. And he slept outside for the night. But when we were leaving, Brother Ishmael burnt his hut. And this time I had had enough of it because I don't want any karmic debt. I can't carry any more karma on me. And he said, you know, Vanessa, this is the problem with humanity. Things happen to people and you just judge, like you just jump, adding punctuations, full stops, exclamation marks. You're so angry that it is happening to good people. Do you know what happened in essence? The first couple that we met, the old man and the old woman, before God gave them, or before life gave them that child that he had, they were in tune with God. Because they didn't have children, they understood that they aren't supposed to put their entire energy into material things. They sought the face of God in every single thing they were going into. They became motivators for those who needed children like them to find fulfillment within themselves. And that was their purpose for coming to this earth plane. Some way, somehow, life graced them with this child, and they idolized the child.
Ethereum Mission, we are not church Christians. We are Jesus Christians. In fact, I find it so strange that people go to church which is supposed to teach them spirituality, and there's no spirituality teaching in the churches. The Bible tells us in Genesis 1, 26 to 28, that God created us in his spiritual image and likeness. In Genesis 2, 7, and then God breathed the spiritual you into the dust and you became a living soul. When we go through even scripture further, the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 44 says, there is a natural body and then there is a spiritual body. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 16 tells you, know you not that you are the temple of the living God, and the Spirit of God dwells in you. There are people who are even afraid of the word spirit. Yet Jesus told us in John 4:24 that God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. All these confirm to us that you are a dual being. You have a natural human body, and then you have a spiritual body. And for each of these, you need the appropriate education for a holistic life. We receive natural education by secular education. Secular education takes you from primary school all the way to university for you to be able to provide for yourself good food, clothing, and shelter. Yet without the spirit, even the natural physical body is not animated to live. We're supposed to receive spiritual education from our spiritual or religious institutions, such as our churches, our mosques, whatever religion you belong to. But when it comes to spiritual education, almost all religious bodies are empty. I find it strange that you know you are spirit, you go to church for you to receive spiritual education, and you know the church is not giving you any spiritual education, yet people keep going. Wow. That's why I invite you to Ethereum Mission. Like I said, we are not church Christians, we are Jesus Christians. We follow what the Master taught, that you are spirit, and the Spirit of God dwells in you as you. The kingdom of God is within you, said the Master. Meaning, the power, love, and the spiritual presence of God is within you. I welcome you to spiritual study and growth in Ethereum Mission. Ideally, look for any Ethereum Mission branch and start your spiritual evolution. Because the first blessing God gave you was also your absolute imperative. It said, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Meaning that you are the very seeds of God, or the seed that God is, the presence that God is in you as seeds. And you are to grow them into trees and bear fruits of peace, love, joy. That's what the book of Galatians told you, Galatians 5:22 to 23. If you want spiritual growth, then you know where to come to. Peace.